Hey future doctors! Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're tackling a topic that can feel like learning a new language, the electrocardiogram, or ECG. I know, all those squiggly lines can look intimidating, but I promise, by the end of this video, you'll feel way more confident reading them. This is your ultimate guide to ECGs, made easy for MBBS and medical students right here in the US. We're going to break it down step by step, so grab your notebook, a cup of coffee, and let's get started. First things first, what exactly is an ECG showing us? It's a recording of the heart's electrical activity. Think of it as an electrical snapshot. Every time your heart beats, it sends out electrical signals. The ECG machine captures these signals from different angles using electrodes placed on the skin and translates them into the waveforms we see on paper. It's a non-invasive, painless test that gives us a ton of information about the heart's function and structure. It's one of the most common and crucial diagnostic tools you'll use in your career. So, let's look at a normal ECG tracing. What are we actually seeing? We have waves, segments, and intervals. The main components are the P wave, the QRS complex, and the T wave. Let's break each one down. The P wave is the first little bump you see. This represents atrial depolarization. In simple terms, it's the electrical signal that causes the atria, the two upper chambers of the heart, to contract and pump blood into the ventricles. A normal P wave is small, rounded, and upright. If you see an abnormal P wave, it could suggest a problem with the atria, like atrial enlargement. Next up, the big one, the QRS complex. This spiky part of the waveform represents ventricular depolarization. This is the electrical signal that makes the ventricles, the powerful lower chambers, contract and pump blood out to the lungs and the rest of the body. The QRS complex is made of three waves, the Q wave, the R wave, and the S wave. The Q is the first downward deflection, the R is the big upward spike, and the S is the downward deflection after the R wave. Because the ventricles are so much larger and more muscular than the atria, this signal is much stronger, which is why the QRS complex is so prominent. A wide QRS complex, for example, might indicate a block in the electrical conduction within the ventricles. Following the QRS complex, we have the T wave. This wave represents ventricular repolarization. This is when the ventricles are electrically resetting or relaxing, getting ready for the next heartbeat. A normal T wave is typically upright and rounded. Changes in the T wave can be really important. For instance, inverted T waves or very tall. Peaked T waves can be signs of myocardial ischemia, which is reduced blood flow to the heart muscle. Or electrolyte imbalances like hyperkalemia. Now, let's talk about intervals and segments. These are the measurements of time between the waves. The PR interval is measured from the beginning of the P wave to the beginning of the QRS complex. It represents the time it takes for the electrical signal to travel from the atria to the ventricles. A prolonged PR interval can signify a delay in this conduction, something we call a first-degree heart block. The QT interval is measured from the start of the QRS complex to the end of the T wave. It represents the total time for ventricular depolarization and repolarization. It's the action phase of the ventricles. A long QT interval is a big deal because it can put a patient at risk for dangerous ventricular arrhythmias. Many medications can affect the QT interval, so it's something you'll always need to keep an eye on. Finally, there's the saint segment. This is the flat line between the end of the QRS complex and the beginning of the T wave. It represents the early phase of ventricular repolarization when the ventricles are contracting. But there's no net electrical activity. The position of the saint segment is critically important. If the saint segment is elevated, raised above the baseline, it's a classic sign of an acute myocardial infarction, a heart attack. Conversely, a depressed saint segment, below the baseline, can indicate myocardial ischemia. Okay, so we've covered the basic building blocks. Now, how do you put it all together to interpret an ECG systematically? You need a reliable method so you don't miss anything. Here's a simple, effective approach. Let's go through it together. Step 1. Rate. How fast is the heart beating? A normal heart rate is between 60 and 100 beats per minute. There are a few ways to calculate it from an ECG strip. The easiest way, if the rhythm is regular, is the 300 method. Find an R wave that lands on a thick line on the ECG paper. Then, count the number of large squares to the next R wave. The rate is 300 divided by that number. So, if there are 4 large squares between R waves, the rate is 300 divided by 4, which is 75 beats per minute. If the rhythm is irregular, you'll need to count the number of R waves in a 6-second strip and multiply by 10. Step 2. Rhythm. Is the rhythm regular or irregular? Look at the R-to-R intervals. Are they consistent? Use a piece of paper or calipers to measure the distance between a few consecutive R waves. If the distances are all the same, the rhythm is regular. If they vary, it's irregular. 2. The most common irregular rhythm you'll see is atrial fibrillation, where the RR intervals are all over the place and there are no discernible P waves. Step 3. Axis. This tells you the general direction of the electrical signal as it moves through the heart. Normally, the axis points down and to the left. A quick way to estimate the axis is to look at the QRS complex in lead I and lead AVF. If the QRS is upright or positive in both leads, the axis is normal. If it's positive in lead I but negative in a VF, you have left axis deviation. Spits. If it's negative in lead I and positive in AVF, you have right axis deviation. Axis deviation can give you clues about conditions like ventricular hypertrophy or conduction blocks. Step 4. Hypertrophy. Is there evidence of chamber enlargement? For atrial enlargement, you look at the P wave. A tall P wave might suggest right atrial enlargement, while a broad notched P wave could indicate left atrial enlargement. For ventricular hypertrophy, you look at the QRS complex. There are specific voltage criteria, like the Sokola line criteria for left ventricular hypertrophy, which involves measuring the S wave in V1 and the R wave in V5 or V6. Step 5. Ischemia or infarction. This is where you look for those critical street segment and T wave changes we talked about. Look through all 12 leads. Are there any street elevations or depressions? Are there inverted T waves? Are there pathological Q waves? Pathological Q waves are deep, wide Q waves that can indicate a previous heart attack. The location of these changes on the 12-lead ECG helps you identify which part of the heart muscle is affected. For example, Saint elevation in leads to 3, and a VF points to an inferior wall ME. Let's recap the systematic approach: rate, rhythm, axis, hypertrophy, and ischemia, infarction. If you go through these 5 steps every single time you look at an ECG, you'll build a solid foundation and be much less likely to miss important findings. Practice is key. The more ECGs you look at, the more patterns you'll start to recognize. Find practice ECGs online, in textbooks, or in your clinical rotations. Go back to the basics we discussed today. Know your waves, your intervals, and have a system. And always remember to correlate the ECG findings with the patient's clinical presentation. We've covered the fundamentals, from the basic waveforms to a systematic approach for interpretation. Thanks for studying with me, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay curious and keep learning.